We go to the villages, Wes in the villages. What's up, Noel fam? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Thank you for doing the job for us, Wes. Always, always. Go Noles. Michael and Tom, I'm working, so I don't know if this has been asked. He wants to get down to brass tacks, Michael. How many commits do you think Florida State gets this weekend?
Yeah, I don't think there's a set number. There's not several guys that told me, "Hey, I'm committing. I'm coming this weekend. I'm going to commit." I do have a few on my mind that I'm eyeing. One I've already mentioned earlier, and Dontrell Glover, offensive lineman. I think that one's kind of teetering right there. That's one I'm going to keep a close eye on. The other one is committed to another school is DB Dallas Golden. I think he's committed to Oregon. That's a guy that I think FSU's made some really strong strides with. I think that's a guy that to keep an eye on. And there's several other guys that they could certainly make a move for. I think Zaire Addison adds into that. I think they could really do some work there because he loves Alex Atkins. There's a big push there. I think you could see just certain guys. There's several guys that are visiting this weekend, like Max Buchanan, even Byron Lewis. Byron reached out to me. Byron knew I was on vacation. I wasn't even back yet. Byron hit me up. It's like, hey, multiple times in maybe 2 or 3 days, Byron said, I'm going to be in Tallahassee this weekend. So it tells me like he's really excited about this trip of being around this FSU team again. So I think that's certainly there's some certain guys that keep in mind just to see how it goes. I don't think there's anybody per se that's told me they're for sure committing, but those are kind of some guys I'm kind of going to watch to see how it goes.
Hypnotic about defensive end, defensive tackle recruiting. You said that you like the trenches, the way that they're going
Yes.
so far. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of talented, explosive guys that they're after. Some of them you're even visiting this weekend. I think one local one is Jalen Wiggins. That's the one I think they're still very much involved with, kind of a mixture defensive tackle, defensive end. Jarquez Carter's another one they're very high on. They're battling Florida. I think it's a Florida FSU battle for sure. That's one that I've been high on for 2 years out of Newberry High School, which is right next to Florida. So Florida's very much in it. Jared Smith is also visiting this weekend. FSU's been really consistent with him. I think Zion Grady's one that's not over. That's one that FSU's still going to be heavily involved with. So there's a lot of talented defensive ends. I think they'll do well. I think they'll get two really solid top tier defensive ends, personally, in my opinion, of based on kind of what their product is really their best selling, what they can do. JP does a great job of showing what FSU is, but their product, not just the product coming up this season, but the product of that NFL draft that they could certainly show that. Jared Verse goes high, certain other guys go high. I think it really can make a big move. Plus, this group they have coming in this year with these defensive ends can really sell their product hard. So I think you're going to get some talented guys that are going to be in the fold, for FSU during the season. But I think there's early on they're still on they're in some pretty good spots with being one of the top teams for a lot of these kids that I just covered a few minutes ago at defensive line.
Chi-Town Noel, he asked this at 6:30. I know you mentioned the name, but I figured we'd get a question. Jamie French. Jamie French. What's going on with the all-everything wide receiver?
The French that's named with two F's.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamie. I think I would say a slight lead to Ohio State for him, but I think it's close. Obviously, it helps. Tramel's committed to FSU. Tramel will also be here this weekend. That helps when you have your guy there. I think he really loves Coach Dugans. I think he really, really loves Coach Norvell. He really loves this offense. Top notch guy. Can do a little bit of everything. I think he's a guy that, like I said, going into this thing, I think Ohio State is the perceived leader from everything I've got from intel, but I definitely don't think it's a major large lead. I think FSU has a chance to really make a surge for this weekend. Since this is the first time I think Jamie will get a chance this year to see how they practice, how they look, how these receivers look, how the offense is going to look, and just his feelings regarding that, because we know what Ohio State does at receiver. It's pretty natural. Everyone knows how really good they are with that position. But I think this is a chance for FSU to show off their product. And that I've said that constantly today of it's really important for these kids to get eyes on what they do. And that really, really shifts things when you do that.
Timmy asks in the chat, are we the favorites to land Tavion Wallace? Oh,
They're
he's up.
Yeah, they're very high up there, Timmy. I'd say they're the team I've heard the most about. I think LSU is also very much in the picture. for him. There's other schools, but I definitely think they're one of the favorites. He's definitely told me every time I've interviewed him that FSU's number one. I do think they're the team I would lean towards, but I still think it's up in the air. It's not like a set in stone thing, but I think they're very high up there, and they covet him very highly. I mean, they've done that from the start. Kind of goes back to the relationship stuff. I do is like from the very start when they covet a guy, it sticks with those guys, and I think he certainly falls in that category. And certainly a guy they're very high and a big one, an important one. They already have Ethan Pritchard. That's a four-star linebacker that I'm very high on from Sanford Seminole. Now, if you can add another one or two more, that will really take some pressure off Randy because that Randy does get and some of it's warranted that you have to have top tier talent, and they need to get better talent in there at the position. But I think this goes back to my point. If you add a guy like Ernie Sims, that kind of really helps you solidify that room in recruiting.
You're not kidding about the charisma that Ernie has too. It's
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So you think that they could take as many as 3 in this class at linebacker?
Yeah, I think they would. If they're three really good ones, yeah. Say you get a Tavion, Riley Pettit John is also visiting this weekend. That's probably the top coup de grace of linebackers. That will be tough because he's out of Texas. So, but you never know. I always say when they get him on campus, certainly the feeling switches on how they view FSU compared to how they viewed them before. If they haven't visited FSU, to my knowledge, it's just like he's visited there before, but nothing extensive like what he'll experience this weekend. So, yeah, I think linebacker could be a position that if things fall in place, they could be one of their strongest groups.
Hypnotic is asking, Hypnotic Anonymous,
Okay.
how are we looking for Khalik Lockett? How are things with Khalik Lockett?
Yeah, I visited on March 9th. Had a really good visit. Talked about how FSU surged up there. I think it still be one of those tough prospects as you're talking about a Texas kid, and we know the emergence of what Texas did last year, played in the playoff, even though FSU, in my opinion, should have been in their slot or somebody else's slot in that four, but they've improved their product, Texas. So they will be certainly really tough, always tough to beat to get Texas kids. But FSU did what they needed to do coming out at first visit. He talked about how FSU really moved up a lot. It was the adjectives and the body language was significant when I watched the video, as far as his interview. So I think they're very much in the picture now. I think now the next step is getting him multiple visits. He's talked about coming, back for a practice in April. I think that's kind of almost a generic sometimes response I feel with kids that they say they're going to do it. So if he follows through on that, I think it's a big deal for FSU. Really, so it's the follow up visit. Get multiple follow up visits. I think that one's going to be FSU. I go from I think FSU's a player, a pretty good player, to I think they're a strong player if
Mm.
there's a follow up visit. So that's what I want to watch, and I'm going to check with Kalik and see if something's set up and see if he's visiting and following through on that visit that he likely does in April or an official visit. So I do think they made a strong move. Now it's about the follow up trip.
Night Nick asks, Usmane Kroma, seems like we cooled on him. Any insight on that? What do you think, Michael?
I don't know if there's the cooling more so. He's dealing with a lot of sports at once. I think FSU's in solid communication with him, Nick. I don't think that's slowed down. I think it's more he's been doing basketball for so long. He wasn't able to visit in the spring because of basketball. I still think FSU is high on his list. I think it's more Usman hasn't really visited any place. I think that will pick up. I do think he'll be here in April when they have either their spring game or he'll come for a practice. So I do think there's activity there. I do feel better about Alvin than I do him. But I definitely think FSU is still in solid contention. I know there's also the thing that FSU has Cam Davis. Cam and him do some similar things. So that could be kind of the hard thing to sell when you're looking for different features of different backs. And FSU and David Johnson does a really good job of adding different features of
Yeah.
time of guys. You have Dancy who's fast last year, and then you have Cam who's a power but quick guy, quick feet. So I think they love that mixture. So that's kind of the challenging part with Usman. But I definitely think he's a guy that still visits. I think a lot of people led that into, oh, he wasn't at any of the junior days, and the reason he wasn't there is because he was doing basketball. But I think his visits will ramp up. But I do think Alvin's probably more likely than him at this stage, based on the early feelings with that. But I think Usman's still certainly a guy that's high on their list.